Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. Now, has there ever been a worse Chelsea debut for a player than Moises Caicedo yesterday against West Ham United? I think of debuts and I look back to Sal when he joined from Atletico. Obviously, he had a bit of a shocker on his debut. Infamous one, Fernando Torres. He came into the most hostile of environments. It could have only been worse if it was at Anfield, playing against Liverpool, the club he had just left, outraged fan base, and we all know how that match went. And it'd be quite easy to draw a comparison to the two names that I've just mentioned and maybe possibly make you think that Caicedo was a bit of an overspend by Chelsea and maybe somewhat of a reckless decision. However, I will leave it on this note. Thiago Silva, he came into a Chelsea side and was given the captain's armband in his debut, which is a bit of a weird move, really. He had a shocker in his debut, playing against West Brom. We found ourselves 3-0 down at half-time. Thiago Silva actually making a handful of mistakes and being at fault for one of the goals. And not only at half-time did he have the captain's armband taken off him, in a very unusual move, he had the captain's armband taken off him and still stayed on the pitch. However, that wasn't an indication of things to come for Thiago Silva and his Chelsea career, as in that same season, only a few months later, he went on to play a pivotal part in helping Chelsea lift the Champions League. But this video is not purely about Caicedo's performance against West Ham, but I just wanted to give you that little bit of a story to give us a bit of optimism going into this video, because it is easy to be all doom and gloom. And you know what? With every cloud has a silver lining, and the bad news is that we lost to West Ham yesterday, and you know, it was heartbreaking for all of us. The good news is today I've got fan favourite of the channel, Josh Aveste, back in to talk all things Chelsea against West Ham United. Josh, how you feeling today, mate?
Well, it's good to be back. It's good to be back with your amazing audience, and thanks to everyone for all the comments so far. I know you guys are loving us being together, and it's great. I have to say though, yesterday was a tough day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a very much deflating day, because I've had loads of optimism going into this season, a lot of positives to take from that Liverpool game. And you know what? We're going to get back to the first half, because that was a half that gave us a lot of optimism during the match, and it gives us optimism going forward. However, you know, after the first half and at half-time, we were gutted to see kind of Chukwuemeka come off with an injury just before half-time. But going into the second half, I was saying to my two friends that I was watching the game with, we're all right here. We're fine. We're winning this match. We're probably winning it 3-1, because the run of play had been very, very suitable for us. It had been one that had made me think that we're definitely going to get a good result out of this match. And things seemed to slip away from us in that second half. How did you see it? What were your thoughts at halftime?
I feel like the Enzo penalty, right? That should have been 2-1. We go in at half-time and things are very, very different. But when you go in at half-time at 1-1, it does feel a little bit more jittery. But obviously, as you say, I felt really positive as well. I thought we had the momentum with us. And also, let's talk about this, right? The first 10 minutes was West Ham's, yeah? But from that point, Chelsea were in control.
Dominant.
Like, absolutely dominant. I think that I saw the possession stats. It was definitely over 65% possession. And then I looked at the touches in the box. We had like 10 times more than West Ham. So all of the numbers were indicating that we were doing things right and we were playing in the right way. And so, yeah, I can understand your optimism, and I thought we were going to bomb on. But the second half didn't start as sort of happily as we thought it was going to. I remember the first one that I was a little bit worried about was the Sanchez one. Do you remember Sanchez didn't come out? So basically a ball gets put over the top, Sanchez sticks to his line, and basically, I can't remember who it was, I think it might have been Ben Rama, scuffs his shot, and that could have been 2-1 straight away to West Ham. And in the end, it wasn't. We got away with it. But that was the key thing. We got away with it, didn't we? So then you look at the next thing, and the next big moment was the Antonio goal. And I mean, can we just talk about that for a second? The defending there was absolutely shocking. It was, I think, Disasi and Colwell who were the two players around him. And neither of them are touched tight enough. And that was a sort of a theme of the second half, and actually a lot of the game, really, in that with that effective back three, you've got to have those players, when they have a centre forward like Antonio, they've got to be touch tight to him, and they've got to be around him and making sure that he doesn't get the ball. All Disasi needed to do was put a foot in there and he would have been absolutely fine. And even if he'd fouled him, Colwell was behind him and he wouldn't have got away. So I just think, like, from that moment, as soon as you get 2-1, West Ham at home, the game is effectively like dying at that point, because you're then facing, as we're going to talk about later on, a low block, and it's really, really hard from that point. But what did you think from there? Like, were you worried about that point from that second goal?
Yeah, as I say, I was very, very positive going into the second half. I'd looked at the way we had played. I'd looked at the football we were playing. I thought it was good. I thought Jackson was having a good effect on the game. It was gutting that Carney Chukwuemeka went off, and obviously massively worrying because he is our only real recognised number 10. There's other players that we can speak about could possibly deputise at that role, but the only recognised one for me is Carney Chukwuemeka, and now we're going to have to face, time without him where he's going to be on the sidelines, and that's something we're going to cover in another video that we're recording today, whether or not we need to address that position. But all that being said, I was pretty happy with it. I thought Levi Colwill was having a good game. I liked our attacking threat, and I thought that we were creating more than enough opportunities that if we could just sustain that run of play, we were going to be fine. However, one thing I would say is there's a lot of confusion for me as a fan, for other fans I speak to, and even it looked like it for the 11 on the pitch when it comes to the formation we're playing and the roles they have in that formation. So what do you think about the way we did line up yesterday?
I was really worried about it, to be honest with you, mate. Like, it's one of those ones before the game even kicks off. You can understand why Poch did it. We played very well against Liverpool, and he's just gone, I'm just going to stick with what happened last week. And I always think that's a bit dangerous because the previous week's performance doesn't indicate that you're going to play well this time. West Ham have a very different way of playing than a Liverpool do. And so when you look at it, he's going to say it's a 4 at the back, right? But I disagree in that you've got Chilwell as a left winger who is a defender, right? And there's no way around that. If you're playing a left back at left wing, he's still a left back. He doesn't suddenly become a left winger. And while Chilwell has qualities being able to arrive late in the box and get there, he isn't a natural left winger. So for me, that was a square peg in a round hole. Then you've got Colwill filling in at left back, who again is a very, very good player, but we've got 4 left back options still at the club. So why are we not playing that there? And then Caicedo comes on in the second half. He slots in as a DM, but then he drifts over to the right back area because we're then chasing the game. So it just didn't work. And mate, like, we'll talk about this at another point, but I really do think our formation going forward should be a 4-3-3.
I do personally think whether it's a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, it's got to go to a 4 at the back, because what I do think is if you're a manager coming into Chelsea Football Club and you're following 2 managers in the likes of Frank Lampard and Graham Potter, who we have perceived, whether we're right or wrong in this, we've perceived to not have the strength and courage of their convictions, yeah? A little bit too much trying to keep people happy and whatnot. I'm not saying that Pochettino can't play a 3 at the back, but what I am saying is every single one of us knows that Pochettino's preferred formation has a 4 at the back. Whether it changes in attack or what, it starts off with a 4 at the back. If we did play a 4 at the back yesterday, you've then got to ask the question you just poised, which is, are we massively playing Levi Colwill out of position, and why are we playing him there when he's got way more Premier League experience than Caicedo'S? And we'll get onto Disasi's performance. If we're playing a 3 at the back, the reason we're playing a 3 at the back with the 2 wing backs is because that everyone knows that Chelsea's main strength when it comes to attacking over recent years has been the ability of Ben Chilwell and Reece James in getting forward, good delivery into the box and making things happen for Chelsea. However, whenever we've seen Pochettino with his 4 at the back, there's never actually been a question in regards to what he is getting out of his fullbacks. You know, Danny Rose, Kyle Walker, there's plenty of fullbacks. Luke Shaw in his early days at Southampton, there's plenty of fullbacks that have played under Pochettino that have been able to provide creative flair and attacking flair. So I don't massively think it's a case of if Chelsea start 4 at the back, we're not going to see deliveries into the box from Reece James or Ben Chilwell. So I would personally very much like to see us go to a 4 at the back in the next match. One thing that I do want to move on to is Chelsea's ability to break down a low block. Because when West Ham go down to 10 men in that second half, you should be licking your lips there and going, right, now we've got the hammers on the ropes. If anything, the game got trickier for us when they went down to 10 men. And the ability to break down a low block is something that we saw all of last season, and we're now starting to see again this season. I said last season that the reason, albeit we never got the results, that we sometimes saw better performances from Chelsea when it came to the matches against Liverpool and against the bigger teams and whatnot, is that they came to attack us and they tried to score, and therefore pockets of space were massively left open for us to be able to exploit. When a team sits back at us, I get we're not Man City, okay? I understand that. Man City are brilliant at breaking down that low block, and we don't have the players at this moment in time that they have to be able to do it, or the system they have to be able to do it. But we have got to do better. We've got to do better. And I think that, as we say, the injury of Carney Chukwuemeka, who, let's not forget, as brilliant as he is still our second choice in that position. We're not going to have him back till next year now. We know we're not going to have Christopher Nkunku back to next year now. We need to address that position with either personnel or some change of system where we're able to break down this low block, because otherwise we are just going to see the ball go wide into the box, and then the aerial presence of teams like West Ham, of teams in that lower half of the table, easily dealing with it.
For me, it ultimately comes down to the midfield, though. Like, if you have a very strong DM and actually more defensively minded midfielders, as opposed to someone like a Conor Gallagher, who over and over, I keep saying it, is a more attacking player. He is, again, completely mispositioned in terms of a DM. Like, picking up that ball in that area, for me, is like one of Conor's actual weakest areas, and so he shouldn't be there. And so for me, if you have Lavia coming in, Caicedo that's going to come in and be better as a DM, that's going to unlock the ability for us to play that four at the back, allow the wing-backs to then bomb on, because you've got Caicedo who can sort of drop in and make that sort of effective back three from that perspective. And then we will be able to move forward. And that's how you will break down a low block. Basically what it is have that guy, that Caicedo that fills in, have that as a back three. The wing backs then push right up, get right forward, and almost can invert as well. And again, that's part of the modern game now, is wing backs come in and form like a midfield. And again, we are not doing that anywhere near as much as the top teams. If we get bodies in and around that area, that is how to do it. And we're gonna have to train it. Like, we constantly don't improve in that area. We saw it all last season. Teams are going to do that. Luton are going to do that on Friday night. And in fact, the run that we've got going forward, teams are going to do that over and over to us. So we've got to now train it. It's got to be every week we are drilling it. And that's how we're going to be able to do it. Because otherwise we are going to be really screwed this season, because we can't rely on balls over the top or like an amazing through ball, because those are quite difficult to do when you're playing a team that is pinned in their own area. So we've got to improve that area, mate.
It's definitely something we need to address. Let's move on to a slightly more positive note. Players that you thought performed really well yesterday. I think the obvious one is Raheem Sterling, isn't it?
What a game. Where did he pull that out from?
Sterling rolled back the years yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
And it's so unfortunate for Sterling that he didn't get to come away with a good result, because his performance deserved that. Can I just say one thing about Raheem Sterling, right? What has been a massive frustration of mine, you know this, we've spoke about this, massive frustration of mine is I said that we now need to have a look at how we perceive Raheem Sterling. And I said this a couple of weeks ago before this match. We now need to have a look at how we perceive Raheem Sterling and maybe realise that Raheem Sterling that we have right now is not the Raheem Sterling of old. He's not so much of a flair player. He's not a player that will take people on, run down the line, get balls in. He's more a player that will slow the game down. Yesterday, it's almost like he'd been watching my podcast or listening to the opinions of the fans, because he did roll back the years. He did take people on. He was a lot more direct in his play. He made the right runs. He links up well with Enzo. And if we can see Raheem Sterling take those risks and play like that, I think, do you know what it is? I get that he's been at Chelsea a while now, but you know, under Pep Guardiola, it's very, very system-based. It's very much instructions. And players like Raheem Sterling, players like Jack Grealish, and, you know, other players that have been brought to City, they take a little while to adapt and really have to get that message in. So I get that you can do X, Y, and Z, but I want you to do X. And if you don't do X, you won't be in this team. And it's very, very structured. And I think having the confidence and the ability to be able to express himself again is something that maybe it took Raheem a little while to get back to that with Chelsea. But I do think that, I don't want to go too much into the money side of things and whatever, but as the highest earner, as, you know, a player that's come in for big money, and a player with all that know-how and experience, probably the most decorated player in our squad at the moment when it comes to trophies and what they've done in their career, as that player, I do think that you do need to lead by example, and you do need to be the one that pulls his socks up when everyone else is underperforming and says, right, boys, look, this is how we do it. And that's why I've been massively critical of Sterling in the past. Yesterday, he did that. And
when you talk about young players all around him and an experienced head that needs to show up and make a difference, he did that yesterday. And the ability that he has to play in the pocket, beat a man, get a ball in, is something that when you're discussing a low block and the ability to actually break down teams, he's the kind of player that you need to do that. And so he now becomes the key player to do that. And when you're talking about a game against Luton coming up, we're going to have to see him at his absolute best again to get the goals and get the assists for people like Jackson. And let's be honest, he could have had 2 or 3 assists yesterday with some of the misses that we had. I mean, Jackson had a sitter that he missed, cutting back from a Sterling cross, and he had quite a few of those. So it's a relief more than anything for me, mate, to see Raheem actually step up and be there. But credit where credit's due. I've been very critical of Raheem over and over again, and I've actually questioned whether he deserved to be at the club, to be honest with you. He's been that bad. But I think yesterday showed that he deserved to be, and he deserves to be one of the starting 11 for me.
You spoke about Jackson there. Let's move on to Nicholas Jackson, because it's a mixed bag and there's been mixed opinions on his performance. Yeah. I thought first half he was pretty brilliant. I thought he was really, really good. He played a key part in that Carney Chukwuemeka goal as well. And what I like about Nicholas Jackson is even at times when it looks like he's been dispossessed, when it looks like maybe he might not get the ball, it's not massively pleasing on the eye at all times what he does, but it's so effective. It's so effective. Like, he does end up coming away with the ball. He gets a toe on it and then maybe manages to get round the side of the defender and still breaks away with the ball. The runs he makes, the directness, I thought it was very, very positive. But all that being said, we do need to question, is he going to be that player this season that can then end up with the finished product as well?
I think he is. I think he has the pace. I feel like he is strong enough. Like, I was questioning his sort of overall strength, but he bossed players yesterday. And also, like, fair enough, he had a few touches where they weren't as ideal as what we want them to be. Like, he had a few misplaced balls. He could have had a ball under control, but that just sometimes happens. Like, we've all played football, mate. I've had it more than most people, right? Where you have a touch, it doesn't go where you want it to go, and ultimately then you're not through. But if he had a bit of luck yesterday with the way that the ball falls, he could have been in 2 or 3 times. And I trust him in his finishing ability to actually bag those goals. So overall, I think he is a real bright spark in a game yesterday where there weren't too many positive individual performances. And I actually think going forward in the season, he is the number 9 that we need. And I actually really do trust him. And I think he'll start more often than not. And I actually think that Broja is actually a bit worried.
I think when you touch on Amanda Broja there, I don't think there's any chance he goes out on loan or gets sold, though, because we do desperately need backup to Nicholas Jackson. If anything was to happen, we know Nkunku's out injured. We can't rely on Mason Burstow. It's nothing against him, but we just can't rely on someone of that experience at that level. So I very much agree with you. I see him start in most matches. I do want to start to see a return for all his efforts in terms of actually putting the ball in the back of the net. But I'm patient enough with him. Third start, which is pretty much guaranteed against Luton, I really want to see him get on the goal sheet in that match.
Yeah, I mean, look, Liverpool at home, fair enough, he doesn't score in that. That's a hard game. There aren't really going to be that many chances. And we did create a few, but like, I understand why he hasn't scored there. West Ham away, they've always been a bit of a bogey team for us anyway. That's a hard ground to go to, especially for a young player coming into the Premier League for the first time. In fact, I'd say that's probably one of the hardest grounds to go into. But he played very well. He had chances. And now, right, Luton, and then the run that we've got going forward, I think he'll bag a few goals. And Pochettino, by the way, he agrees.
We speak about the fact that he didn't get a goal yesterday. Could very easily have had a glaring opportunity to get a goal, because we did see there was a little bit of back and forth between him and Enzo when it came to the penalty. Who should have took that penalty for you? Should it have been Enzo? Should it have been Jackson? Or should it have been someone else?
So we've talked about this before, haven't we, about penalty takers? And I hear a lot of people saying that number 9 should be taking penalties. Like, they have the nous, the ability to score goals. They're hungry, and perhaps hungrier than any other player in the pitch to put the ball in the back of the net. And actually, for me, I think penalties are always a bit of a confidence thing. And you need a player that's like, I know I can put the ball in the back of the net, and I know that I've got the ability to score and put it bottom corner. And I think with Enzo, he's a young player coming into the Premier League for the first time, like Jackson would be. But like, going against that West Ham crowd that are baying for blood, that want you to miss, I can understand why the pressure got to him in that point. But yeah, for me, when I'm looking at our penalty takers, I think Reece is the most natural penalty taker because he's the most composed and technically one of the best players that we have. And I just feel whenever he's over the ball, I feel very confident with his technique. I feel like he's going to be able to do it. It's all about getting bottom corner now these days. So for me, Reece would be the number 1. I understand, and I agree with you, actually, that Chilwell could be a number 2.
I thought yesterday Chilwell was the obvious option
to
take it. And if it wasn't Chilwell, I would have rather have seen Nicholas Jackson step up and take that penalty. That's just me personally. It's very easy to say it in hindsight now. Enzo's missed it. I completely understand why he took it.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about confidence there, I think that Enzo is massively a player we're seeing growing confidence. Did you see probably first hour of the game how much he was calling for the ball? Every position his hand went up straight away, whether or not he was the best option. That is a confidence thing. So I think that maybe he would have thought that's the icing on the cake there. Let me put this in, take that little bit of a goal weight off of my shoulders if you'd really have one of them on Enzo. But the penalty was a poor penalty.
It was a really poor penalty. And like, if you're talking about technique for a penalty, it was probably one of the worst places you could put it. It was a very good height for the goalkeeper. It wasn't in the corner. And you are now questioning, do you let him take another penalty?
He tried the double bluff as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
He completely looked at where he was putting the ball. Looked the whole way. And because he was doing that, I didn't think he was doing the double bluff. I thought, okay, you're looking left, you're going to put it bottom right-hand corner. Roll it in, nice and tight, into the corner. He put it where he was looking, and the goalkeeper picked up on that.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of backlash about Thomas Souček and how he was the player that actually cleared the ball out of the box and he was already running into the box. And that was clear and obvious to see. However, I don't want to touch on it because the way I see it is if we put away the penalty, which I believe that it's very easy for an armchair fan to sit there and go, well, any footballer should be able to score a penalty. I get that. But we didn't put away the penalty. I'm not going to make anything of that.
No, I'm not going to complain about that. That's one of those things you've just got to score the penalty. It doesn't, for me, it never really impacts it enough to have a retaken penalty. Like, if you think about it, the punishment for a retaken penalty is quite severe. A guy encroaching slightly doesn't change that. So, yeah, Enzo should have slotted it. I know you like Chilwell as a penalty taker, but I am also a big believer that strikers should be taking penalties. They're the ones that have the goal tally, and I think Jackson could do with the confidence of scoring that goal. And I think he scores it, and then the game looks very different, doesn't it? So yeah, that was the turning point of the match, and you could see from that point that it could go negatively. And I know what we're saying at halftime, it could have been good, but like missing a penalty has a big impact in the team.
So there's a few players here because I want to speed things up a little bit. There's a few players here. Also because I don't want to dwell on my negativity. There's a few players here I'm going to tell you would fall into my negative assessment from yesterday, right? So tell me who you don't agree with, okay? Axel Disasi had a pretty negative performance. Caicedo, we're going to speak about in a little bit more detail. Modric is one that I think that you might disagree on. I thought he had a pretty negative performance. I thought that his judgment was pretty poor in the game. And I'm never going to say that, for that price, he didn't put the price tag on his head. What I would say is just for a player being bought into Chelsea as a potential first-team starter, he is yet to light me with confidence that he can be someone that we can hang our hat on as a creative outlet. Anyone else that you would put down with a negative performance or anyone there that you would disagree with?
I would disagree with the Modric shout. And the reason why I would do that is because we as Chelsea fans need to get around this guy. He's a confidence player. And I don't think he's as bad as what everyone is saying. Like, remember, he comes on at 45 odd minutes, maybe a bit earlier than that. And he has to get up to speed with the game straight away and come into, like I say, a ground which is very, very difficult to come in and play against, right? And again, he's coming in and might not necessarily be playing in a role that he wants. He's playing in a system which is very difficult. Chilwell was still on the pitch at that point, so they're doubling up on the left-hand side. And ultimately, like, he does make good runs. He made, he gets in and he's incisive. He has the ability to beat a man. He can put in a cross. And he put in, let's not forget, one of the best crosses of the entire game. And there's not a number 9 or someone in the box, right? So I think it is harsh, mate, to say that he was one of the negatives. I put him in the category where I was like, he was okay. He didn't light the world on fire. And I think, again, so young, has the raw ability. He just needs to be coached and also supported. He's one of those players that, like a Torres, that needed to feel the love. As soon as he felt the love, he was, knocking balls past Valdez and knocking it in the back of the net. He had that confidence. So I think Modric is one of those players that will come good.
Does it beg a massive question there? And it's just come into my mind while you're talking there, that the fact that we have got a lot of depth in that wing position, on either side really, because we can switch players over and whatnot, yet we're playing most of the time with fullbacks that are bombing on. Does it not sort of say to you that maybe you need a Gary Neville type figure at right back to get the best out of these wingers? We saw that in the game against Liverpool, although Sterling had a mixed bag, some would say a very decent match and was fairly creative, he sort of knew the role that Reece James was playing in terms of bombing on. When he didn't have Reece James there yesterday, he decided, right, it's on me now, I've got to take it. Well, you look over at the other side, like you were saying, Ben Chilwell on the pitch with Modric at the same time, who does what? Because you can only really have one of you doing that if you aren't to become massively exposed.
Yeah. So look, this is a big shout out now that we have to do 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, right? That's the first thing to say. The second part of it is that we know that we've got so much attacking impetus down the left-hand side with players like Maatsen and Chilwell, and even Lewis Hall, if he's still there, the ability to bomb on, get balls in from the left-hand side. So for me, that means that you've got to play a more defensively minded right back. And Gusto can do that. So this is why Gusto would end up in my team, because he has the ability to sort of tuck in. We saw him doing that all during pre-season. There are two other names that I'll mention. Disasi, why is he not playing at right back? He's played at right back for Monaco. He can do that. If Reece James isn't there, let's shore up the right-hand side and play a centre back, a more defensively minded player there to let the left-hand side bomb on. Or, elephant in the room, Trevor Chalobah. He's about to leave the football club. He played amazingly well when he was covering for Reece James at the end of last season. He is a very able right-back option, and he's not even on the bench. I know he's injured at the moment, and he's going to be leaving. So I think that's a real, as a club, I understand why they're doing it from a transfer perspective, but that's a big L for me. So we need to shore up that right-hand side.
You said it was an elephant in the room. It was a bit of an elephant in the room for me yesterday when I was looking at the performance of Disasi and sort of thinking, we've got Trevor Chalobah. And I know we've just bought this boy in for money, and, there's certain questions that will arise with our strategy in terms of that. But I would have hung my hat on Trevor Chalobah to play better in that role yesterday. One man who did not have a great game yesterday was Moises Caicedo. 37 minutes played, 8 possessions lost, 2 fouls, 1 error leading to a shot, 1 penalty given away. What's your assessment on that performance? I'm going to start and say I think it's a little bit harsh. He hasn't played a minute of football in 60 days. He's come straight in to a game that we're chasing, a game that there's going to be massive importance on his performance, particularly coming in, because all of a sudden, every time you get the ball, every time, there was one point when I heard the Sky Sports commentary say, that's the volley of a £100 million man, and it's like, come on, mate. You know what I mean? It's not an easy game to come into. And I'm sure whatever commentator it was that said that wouldn't have done a much better job in their prime. So, little too harsh to put the magnifying glass so far on Caicedo? Or do you think that, that did beg serious questions of him?
Yeah, recruitment team, they're the ones that are the ultimate failures here. It's not Caicedo's fault. The recruitment team need to do the business. They need to put the money down, get it done early, to allow their manager, and this is where, the American board need to sort of step up, and maybe they don't understand football and the way that it works, because if they get the business done early, we were always going to have to pay £100 million plus for this guy. Brighton are like that, right? So if you believe that he's the guy, spend the money, get it done early, get him involved in pre-season. Because for me, that was the biggest area. He didn't have the fitness that he needed to have, or the match fitness too. And those are two different things. He's a very fit guy, but match fitness is a completely different beast, right? I understand why Poch didn't start him now. And we were all, before the game, questioning, why is he not just throwing him in? He's this £115 million man, start him, get him involved right now. I understand why he didn't, because he looked rusty. And that is one of those things where technically we know that he's more than capable enough. But if he isn't raring and ready to go, then he's going to make mistakes like he did yesterday. So, yes, it's harsh. Is he going to come good? 100% he's going to come good. He is going to be absolutely brilliant for us, and he is going to be starting every week in that DM role. And let's not play him at right back. Let's play him in the centre where he should belong, and let's have him running around, making tackles. He made a few very good tackles. And look, I do think the narrative is driven by other fans that want him to be a failure, because they either are jealous that that is in at their club, or they would love him to be in their team generally, right? Or they want him to fail at Chelsea, which is fun. It's always fun to have a big money transfer failure at Chelsea for opposition fans.
Ironically, if the recruitment team had got that done early, he would have cost about 15 million less as well. So that's one thing with it. What I would say is, Caicedo has come from Brighton, Hove Albion, and let's be honest, Brighton have been having it off the last few seasons. They've been playing good football. Games have been going their way. I'm not saying they haven't had to fight for results, but there's a very different vibe and atmosphere playing in that Brighton team over the last couple of seasons as there has been playing in that Chelsea team. Also, playing for Chelsea, you're the hunted, and you need to get used to that. He didn't have that price tag on his head when he was playing for Brighton. He was a player that came in for small money and then went out on loan. There's so many different layers and dynamics to how people perceive and what they expect of Caicedo now, that he's got to learn to get used to it and get used to it quickly. The positive is, I think he will. There's many positives that it's very hard to see because our vision is blurred by, how we feel after that game, but there are positives to take away going forward. One of them is that if we can play how we did in that first half and sustain it, we will get results. I do think that actually we played the better football, 75% possession, so many more touches in the opposition half than West Ham had. It does pose the question that how do we break these teams down, because that's probably going to be a stat that we see continue going forward. But I do think there's positives to come of it, and I do think that against Luton, we're going to have a good result. I don't think we throw the baby out of the bathwater just yet, and I don't think we panic and think, I heard, TalkSport, they're very selective with who they let come through on the radio. They want headlines. They were getting Chelsea fans on saying, Pochettino out already. I'm all right with it. Okay, it left a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, but having slept on it, I'm all right with it. I do think we're in a building season, a season that I still do believe that my expectations haven't changed after that match. I still believe we're going to go on to get Champions League football. We would have liked to have got a win yesterday, but it's not all negative, is it?
No, it's not. Look, we've got a young squad. We had so many debutants yesterday. We have so many people coming in for the first time. They are going to come good. I think we could have easily been 2-1 up if the penalty had gone in. We could have even scored more goals than that. I think Poch overall has had some of the worst luck, and we as Chelsea fans have had some of the worst luck with injuries as well. You've got to remember, we had, 6 players out injured yesterday, and we've got some coming back now that are going to improve the team immediately. We are, playing with a very threadbare squad, really, aren't we now? But there are so many other positives. We've got Lavia coming back. We've got Caicedo who will get fitter and will come in. Even if you just think about the XG of the game, like when you're talking about creating chances, our XG was 2.57 XG, right? And, you can't always judge a game on XG anymore. Like it's a bit of a meme, isn't it, to sort of say, I won the XG battle, and Graham Potter was famous for that. But we had chances. We could have won the game. And so when you look at the result looks really, really bad, doesn't it? 3-1 loss. But when you look at the sort of the data behind it, and Poch was saying this after the game, overall, the performance is encouraging, and I'd rather have an encouraging performance and a loss than a win sometimes with a really bad performance, which indicates further bad performances going forward. So overall, as Chelsea fans, we should be very, very positive with the season. We still can, as you say, make a difference this year. We can be top 4. And so we've just got to sort of hang on. And it's a little bit like that. And in a weird way, like Man United fans are probably feeling similar, and there are a few other clubs in there at the moment that haven't had the first 2 games that have gone the way they wanted to. But ultimately, they know that they will come good, and I feel that way.
So our message from me and Josh to you would be, don't panic. Stay positive. There are a lot of positive things to take from the 180 odd minutes we have seen from this Chelsea side so far this season. We need to work on stretching out the periods of time where we're able to do that, and we need to work on our game management. But it isn't doom and gloom. There were certain performances, and a lot of performances last season, where there just were no real positives to take away from it. And I think what we've seen in this first 2 games does give us genuine cause for optimism if we can silence out the amount of negative comments I'm going to get and negative messages I've had over the weekend. I'm sure you have yourself. If we can silence that out and keep a level head here, we're going to be all right. I genuinely do think that. And keep your eyes peeled, because either tomorrow or the next day, myself and Josh are going to drop our preview ahead of the Luton game, which we'll both be at, won't we?
Yeah. So can't wait to be back at the Bridge. I wasn't able to go for the first game, and you weren't at the first game either. No. So to be back, it's going to be brilliant. They want vlogs from us, mate. We're going to have to start taking a camera.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it at some point. We'll get something like that set up. But once again, if you haven't already, I want to thank all of you, because Josh's subscriber base has gone up significantly. And obviously it's from the real quality content that he's been banging out himself, but you lot have played a massive part in that too, from honouring our wishes of you, which is to go over and subscribe to Josh's YouTube channel. He's banging out videos every week on there. Plenty of really good content coming from there. I know you lot enjoy having him on the channel. So the link to his channel is in the description. Head over there, subscribe to Josh's one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe, click the bell so that you get a notification, and I will see you all in the next one.